r/NoSleep. Posted by u/Tully, Tull13. I take late night drives. The things I've seen are unnatural. I've always suffered with insomnia. Even from a young age like 9 or 12, it's always plagued me. I usually just stay up doing meditative things until I fall asleep. That's before I got my car and driver's license. Now I just take long drives to the rural parts of my county where the woods and farmland are. No one is ever out on the road, so it's very peaceful. With that being said, it doesn't mean I'm alone on those dirt roads. The things I've seen have both horrified and intrigued me. I'll share a few experiences I have had on these stretches of lonely road. The figure. During one of my late night drives, I went further than I usually do. The road gets older and more overgrown in those parts. It basically leads to a very ancient forest with nothing but tire marks as a road. I'm driving, and all of a sudden I catch something in my headlights. A tall humanoid figure covered up by the bushes, facing a tree with its arms by its side, Blair Witch style. I've seen stuff like this before, so I just take a mental note of it and continue on exploring. For context, the things you encounter out here at night aren't necessarily hostile. They won't mess with you if you don't mess with them. I didn't see that particular figure for the rest of the night, and I didn't get a good look at them because of the bushes covering them. All I knew at the time is that they were tall as shit. I'm talking making basketball players look scrawny. Other than its freakish height, the proportions were all out of whack. One shoulder was huge and beefy but had a twig-like arm attached to it, and the other shoulder was thin but had a bodybuilder arm at the end of it. That night was pretty uneventful, so I decided to head back early and try to sleep. The next night was much more interesting. As per usual, I couldn't sleep, so I hopped on my car and drove to the rural dirt roads. I decided to head back into those deep woods to see if I could see that weird tall figure again. I'm driving slowly down this forest for 30 minutes, radio off, dead silent woods, and I don't see a thing. Which is pretty uncommon not to see something weird. I closed my eyes and sighed, running my fingers through my hair. When I opened them, the figure was there. Misshapen body, arms at its sides, facing the opposite direction. It was directly in front of my headlights, and I got a better look at it. This thing was wearing a filthy dark green trench coat with some torn brown jeans and boots splattered with mud. The figure's legs were also misshapen and uneven. One leg was swollen and was as thick as a car tire, while the other leg was literally just skin and bones. The hair on the back of its head waxed patchy and looked like a failed buzz cut. It stretched out its skinny arm like it was getting ready to point at something to the side. The figure's hands made finger scissors that opened and closed. I sat there, completely in shock. My heart sank with the realization, it was mocking me. A while back in school, I got bullied by this asshole who called me Snip Snip and would constantly make the same scissoring motion with his fingers. He called me this because, well, I'm a trans girl. I grunted in anger and gestured for this thing to move to the side. Its back was facing me, so it didn't see. I had serious thoughts of running this thing over, but I remembered. If I don't mess with them, they won't harm me. I just drove around it and didn't dare look in the rearview mirror to see its face. It was facing backwards for a reason. I still see it from time to time, and it always is mocking me with gestures, mimicking something painful from my past. Sign language to mock my sibling who went deaf from an infection, waving a fist around violently to reference my physical ex, the gesture of holding a cigarette to make fun of my aunt who died of lung cancer, etc. This thing really just pisses me off more than anything. Its mutated-ass body is kind of unnerving though. The Eater. The Eater is a pretty common one to see on those roads at night. My first encounter with it was just like all the other times I see this thing. It's semi-humanoid with pitch-black skin and a very obese frame. It walks on all fours like a gorilla, it has tiny claws for hands, its face is like a leech with dead, glazed-over eyes on the sides of its neck, and the gross thing has a long tongue. I'll see it early on in my drives. The Eater is usually crouched over a corpse of a dead animal with a chunk of the carcass's meat in its tiny hands. The Eater just licks the meat with that huge tongue. It just laps up gore and blood. I don't think it hunts, it's more of a scavenger. The Eater is very docile and gets kind of curious when I pass by. It doesn't get too close though. Sometimes I'll throw some leftover dinner I have into the tall grasses for it. I still wouldn't touch it if you fucking paid me. Live and let live is what I've learned in these places. Skinless. Skinless is one of the more dangerous things out in those woods. Whenever I see her, I immediately turn around and go straight home. She's a skinless woman, hence the name, in a white dress soaked in blood. Her flayed body is always bleeding, and she has a large butcher's knife clenched in her hand. She appears in the tall grass, and will stumble towards your car slowly. She's slow, but she will catch up eventually. Skinless will stand by your driver's side window and tap her knife against the glass. She'll ask you if she's beautiful in a voice that echoes through your soul. It sounds like a much more demonic voice is speaking under hers. If you lock eyes with Skinless, you'll have the uncontrollable urge to gag or throw up. If you do throw up or gag, she'll violently smash your window and try to flay your skin off. I've only had this happen once, and I managed to speed off before she could shatter the window. She kept screaming about how she will skin me alive. If you do basically anything, she'll kill you. I haven't really bothered to try saying yes because it's nearly impossible with the crippling fear and that sick feeling you get in your stomach. Your best option is to just drive away before she catches up. Once you get out of those grasses and to civilization, you're pretty much fine. I may write about my first encounter with Skinless in a separate post. If you see her in the distance, just turn around and don't look back. Headlights. This is by far the most dangerous creature I've encountered on my drives. If you see this thing, you better go as fast as you can in the other direction and pray to every single goddamn deity you know. I almost stopped going on drives after I met this thing. Last month I was on a drive that was eerily calm. There was nothing. No wind, no rustling, not even any strange apparitions. I thought it was strange and slowed down slightly while driving, my eyes darting to every corner of the tall grass in the forest. There was absolutely nothing. Skinless usually scares off some other entities and animals, but she only appears once every couple of weeks. This was different. This continued until I reached an old farm at the edge of the tall grass. I usually pull to a crawl and look at the barn. Sometimes there are shadows or a strange ram-like creature that walks by the windows. Nothing walked by the windows. Strangely, the absence of any horrible monster was making me afraid. That's when I saw it. Two huge headlights stabbing my eyes like two suns. I heard the rumbling sputter of a damaged engine. In front of me was a 1940s-style truck painted completely black. A sense of impending death fell over me like a macabre blanket, and I quickly fumbled with the stick shift to put my car in reverse. I nearly floored it as a scream erupted from inside the truck. The scream was not of this world. It ripped all the joy I had in my heart out and into the starless night. Whatever was driving that thing was pure evil. It was an ancient force of malice, like the boogeyman or the devil. The truck engine growled, and it peeled after me while I was in reverse. I didn't have time to turn around, or else it would cut me off and crash into me. Eventually, I reached a clearing where I could turn around by putting all my weight into turning the steering wheel. I zoomed down the forgotten stretches of road with the truck in hot pursuit. My radio came to life with a piercing roar of static. It played an audio that still haunts me to this day. A woman was screaming in pure fear. A deep, primal howl of pure dread. In the background of her screams was that old "Here Comes the Boogeyman" song. A masculine voice could also be heard mumbling as there was a slicing sound and the woman's screams somehow got louder. I peered into the rear view again to see another horrible thing. Two huge pale arms that were 6 feet long coming out from beneath the black truck. The hands balled into fists and tried to slam on my rear window, but I quickly swerved, almost hitting a tree. These pale arms coming from the truck galloped along the ground, helping it gain speed. I soared out of the old roads and pulled onto a modern street and slammed the brakes at a gas station. As I caught my breath and refueled from that horrifying experience, I noticed my radio was spewing a choppy static that sounded like a dying moan. Yeah, I haven't been out driving for a while after. I'm thinking I'm gonna start taking a different route. If you do find yourself there, remember to chuck some meat in the field, look out for Skinless, and don't even think about heading to that barn. The next story of this video. Posted by u/Tully, Tull13. The report. Quickly after I posted about my experiences during my late night drives. I take late night drives. The things I've seen are unnatural. I got a message from someone. He was a guy that lived near me. He said his grandpa worked on a similar case to Skinless. His grandpa was a detective in the 40s. He sent me a page from his granddad's diary. I fact-checked it, and it's disturbing to say the least. There laid her body. The one we've been looking for a while now. The skin completely removed, stripped from the flesh with careful precision. The white nightgown was soaked completely with blood. Jesus. Smith gagged into a handkerchief. What sick bastard could do this to a poor girl? I barked as my steel toe boots digged into the hot, sandy dirt. Daniels rushed over and began to swat the buzzing clusters of flies beginning to form on her. Poor Smith is a rookie. He shouldn't be seeing this. Maggots? I asked sharply. No, surprisingly. This was recent. Daniels replied in a grim tone. I crouched down by the carcass with my partner and helped him clear away the insects and flip the body over. She was face down. Oh God, the front was worse. Eyelids and lips completely ripped off, leaving her eyes bulging and her teeth showing like marble pearls in a pile of gore. It was disgusting. This is the most repulsive crime scene I have witnessed. Smith. Why yeah? Get the coroner and the cleanup crew. We're bringing her in. Okay. Around 30 minutes later, they loaded her up and drove the carcass to the lab. Me and Daniels followed quickly after. We sat in the outside area with a depressing silence filling the air. So, what do you think happened? Daniels asked me, trying to break the blood-soaked ice. Just a sick fuck picking up a girl and killing her. Nothing new. Crime of passion? No. There was no relation. Yes, violent crimes tend to be of passion, but when they are this violent, the murderer has no social connection to the victim. What if it's a serial killer? Wouldn't be surprised if it was. The coroner's assistant popped out from the doorway. A petite girl with soft features complementing her curious eyes and freckles. Her name is Allison. Me and her are good friends. Mr. Daniels and Mr. Rivers. You two can come in. She invited in her squeaky and breathy voice. I gave her a pat on the back as me and Daniels strolled into the lab. We saw her. The girl. Her fleshless jaw was agape, and the red midsection was pulled apart into two flaps. There are a lot of cuts and burst blood vessels. The cuts are too clean and deep to be from thorns and the such. She was fighting back. Off the top of my head I'd say, died of blood loss. Allison explained. What are these slashes around the jaw? I inquired, using my pen to tilt the corpse's head. That, I can't figure out. We're gonna need the coroner for that, but he's on leave. When me and Daniels found her, she was face down in the ditch. The ditch had some rocks in it, especially near her face. Well, if it was from her being thrown face down on the rocks she would have way more fragments stuck in her face. They appear to be from movement. She was screaming, perhaps? Daniels chimed in. The room went silent. Allison looked at me and Daniels with sudden realization. Her eyes quivered, and I hung my head down low. I made the sign of the cross as Allison gasped in horror. She was alive, like this, Allison murmured. It would explain a lot. The streaks on the dress, drag marks of blood, I continued. How long you think she was still kicking? Daniels questioned hesitantly. 5-10 minutes. Depending on how her wounds were treated before she was dumped. For someone in that much pain, must have felt like hours. God rest her soul, I sighed. I only stayed for a couple more hours after that. I tried to get out of there as soon as possible. I loathed seeing that body. It unnerved me. I heard they recovered the murder weapon soon after further down the road. It was an old butcher's knife. Allison requested to have it during the autopsy to easily measure wounds. I didn't care. I was gonna put in a request to be moved off the case tomorrow. I needed some sleep first. As I slept, I had dreams about her eyes. Those bloodshot, green eyes, they were frozen in an expression of pure horror. Out of everything about her body, what the hell was so disturbing about those eyes? I was suddenly awoken by the phone ringing downstairs. When I awoke, I noticed a puddle of bile festering on my pillow. I had retched in the night. I groggily got up and stumbled downstairs to answer the phone. Hello? Rivers? Daniels stuttered in a panic over the phone. What's wrong? You okay? The body is gone. Gone. And so is the knife, and oh God, Allison. My eyebrows furrowed. What happened to Allison? Someone cut her face off.